Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Stark Reflections. If you can't hear it in my voice, my flu has continued to progress. I'm now on day 9 of it. Now most flus are supposed to last 5 to 10 days, so I'm hoping that this one will soon be on its way out. We'll see. It is not a welcome guest in my body. Today's episode features an interview with Kevin MacLeod, who you may recognize is the composer of the music that we use for this podcast. Kevin is an American composer and musician who is perhaps best known for his distribution of royalty-free library of music through his website, Incompetech.com. He has made over 2,000 self-composed pieces of music available for download under a Creative Commons 3.0 license, which basically allows anyone to use his music for free as long as he receives attribution. This open spirit has led to Kevin's music being used in millions of YouTube videos and thousands of films. As of July 2016, he has had over 2,300 composer credits listed on the Internet Movie Database, and his music has been used in Martin Scorsese's 2011 film, Hugo, several commercial video games, and videos by online content creators such as CollegeHumor and Good Mythical Morning. I first discovered Kevin's music back in about 2008-2009 when I created my Prelude to a Scream podcast. Now, this was a podcast featuring short fiction by Mark Leslie. If you stick around at the end of this interview, I'll play a short clip from one of those episodes of that podcast that pod faded years ago. But I have used Kevin's music multiple times for both podcasts and YouTube videos and other sources. And as an artist myself, I always make sure to include attribution, and I've also employed the various payment options that he makes available because I'm grateful that he makes his work so easily available, and I love to see artists like that who give so much be successful. So I'm always, like Kevin, very willing to pay for things that I use. Now, speaking of payment and giving, I have a bit of news. Findaway Voices is no longer sponsoring this podcast. Instead, they're sponsoring something even more fun. They're sponsoring a tongue twister that Will from Findaway Voices will send to me just prior to me recording the episodes that everyone can laugh at me tripping over my tongue. So, here's this week's terrible tongue twister sponsored by Findaway Voices. Betty Botter had some butter. But she said, this butter's bitter. If I bake this bitter butter, it would make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter, that would make my batter better. So she bought a bit of butter, better than her bitter batter, and she baked it in her batter, and the batter was not bitter. So 'twas better Betty Botter bought a bit of better butter. Say that again. Betty Botter had some butter, but she said, this butter's bitter. If I bake this bitter butter, it would make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter, that would make my batter better. So she bought a bit of butter better than her bitter butter, and she baked it in her batter, and the batter was not bitter. So 'twas better Betty Botter bought a bit of better butter. Oh, okay, I only tripped a couple times saying that. It actually reminds me of a little joke I used to say because my using my Baba's accent talking to my friend Peter, and it was, and I thought this would be cute to reveal is, want some butter, Peter, or some peanut butter butter? Of course, the butter's better for your body, Peter, but the peanut butter's got the peanut in the butter, Peter, buddy. This Betty Botter thing reminded me much of that. So thanks so much, Will, for making me trip over my tongue so many times and for bringing back the butter, Peter poem from before. So yes, that's the terrible tongue twister from today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think. And if you're looking to learn more about Findaway voices, I can say this without tripping over my tongue. Check out starkreflections.ca/findaway. And now, no more tongue tripping. Let's get on to the delightful interview with Kevin MacLeod. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me over.
I want you to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do, how long you've been a musician, etc.
Myself, I'm a guy who writes music, apparently for everyone on the internet. I've been doing it for over 10 years now. How long? I don't know. Musicianship before that, professionally, probably another 10, 15 years.
Okay. So what led to you wanting to launch the Incompetech website and the services that you offered?
The Incompetech website started out 1997, I think, just as my own personal website, because I used to be a web developer back in those days. Okay. And so it's a place where I would go and just test out stuff. And it was fine. It was just like a fun place to do stuff. And, one day I started throwing some music up there and started working. So I kept doing it. I had no grand plans. These are just things that happen.
It just sort of happened that way. And then the work came. So there's a thread that runs through Creative Spaces for writers and musicians that says exposure doesn't pay my bills. But you've been quoted as saying that exposure can be good. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Like 100% of the people who have never heard you don't like you.
Okay.
The only way to find an audience is to have them be exposed to you. And I know it looks frustrating for people. It's like, they'll do something and it's like, 1 million people heard this and I'm still eating mac and cheese.
Okay.
Like, can't somebody throw me, something? And now it's getting so good with, I don't know if you're familiar with Patreon, but man, that place is lovely. Like when I find a video that I enjoy, it's like I want to support this. This is amazing. And I feel disappointed when people don't have a Patreon because I want to give them money.
Because you like it and you want to but you're coming from that as a creative person who puts work out there, so you recognize all the heart and work that goes into that.
Right. Yeah, they've made my life better with their videos on the Riemann Zeta continuation. I do math sometimes.
Okay.
But and I'm like, how can I support this? And it's like, and some people you can, and some people you can't. So
is there a particular percentage that you've recognized where for every 10,000 downloads you get one person that wants to donate something, or how does that?
Yeah, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.5%. It's not real high.
Okay.
Well, it's got to be way lower than that.
Okay, and the music that you write, so many different genres, so many different moods. It's been used not only obviously for videos, for podcasts, for movies, for television. Do people find you coming to the website? How do they discover you?
I'm assuming Google. They find me through exposure. There's tens of millions of videos out there that have my music on it, and if somebody's making a video game and they're like, just happen across one of these videos, they'll be like, wait a minute, who's this guy? Can I get this music? And the answer is almost always yes. Yes, you can.
Now, you mentioned video games. That's intriguing. So there are video games where you've done obviously different moods, mood music pieces for the background, tension, stuff like that. I can imagine that's probably a large, there's probably a large market there for that need.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the games that you're most familiar with recently that might have been using some of your music?
I know when PlayStation VR launched, I had music in 4 of the launch titles. I was in Kerbal Space Program is a big one that uses my music.
Okay.
I think there was a Saints Row one, Stanley Parable. There's a giant list. There's a database somewhere. I haven't seen it recently.
Okay. Now, this reflects back to something else that I have read from you. And so good marketing, when I talk to writers, I always say it starts with first you have to identify your target audience. But when you create something that isn't appreciated or enjoyed by the intended audience, what does that mean?
That means I screwed up. That means I thought I knew who I was going for, and I thought I knew what they appreciated, and wow, was I wrong. Which happens, and it's frustrating, but yeah, go back and redo it and try it again. Either that or say, I don't understand this audience. I clearly don't understand this audience, and I can't work in this realm.
So is that something you go back to and give it another try, or do you just realize that maybe this wasn't a good fit and move on to the other project?
Oh yeah, I just move on. And I mean, if I'm really interested in it, I'll try and go back and reanalyze it and find out what failed and how it failed. But honestly, I thought I did it right the first time. And otherwise, I wouldn't have released it. But yeah, it's a little disappointing every now and again.
So how do you define audiences? Because there's just so many different types of music that you create. How do you define them?
They're all different. They're like things that are different.
It's just such a broad spectrum.
My analogies failed me this morning. There are people who are looking for super exciting sorts of things. There are people who are looking for super tensiony sorts of things. There's audiences that are younger, there's audiences that are older, there's audiences that are regional. There's a lot of different audiences out there, and I don't think there's any one way that I come to define them. I just sort of have this vague blob of what is this person's life like? What is the media they consume? How are they being influenced? And try to match whatever speed they're at,
Okay. Now I notice I can see in the visual that we have, I can see that you have a very looks like a very professional, nice microphone. I can imagine.
Yes.
Very clear sound. So, in terms of the equipment startup for that, what's the core basics that you need to get started?
Well, I have a Mac running Logic, which is I think $200.
Okay.
And then you need ideally like either some studio monitors or some headphones so that you can hear what you're doing. And that's it. That's really all you need.
Okay. And you're at a home studio, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So does that mean that your commute is, going and putting the coffee on in the morning? Is
that? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I feel a little bit disconnected now since I moved, because I used to live in New York, where your bedroom and your studio and your living room and your kitchen are all the same room.
Of course.
And so there I had like a 2-meter commute from where I sleep to where I get up. And now I have to actually negotiate stairs, and it slows me down a bit. I'm not going to lie.
Now, do you wear a Fitbit? Does that get you extra steps in your day?
It's on my iPhone. Yeah, I do a lot of, I don't know, 15 flights of stairs a day.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of back and forth. So that's kind of interesting. And you've been doing that sort of commute, either the 2 meters or up and down the stairs for 10 years now.
Yeah.
Now, do you travel at all, or do you mostly stay at the home base?
I don't travel much. I've gone out to a couple of conferences. I might hit a couple more this year. I intensely dislike destination vacations.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I like them when I get there. I just hate the process
of getting there. So
they should all be like 2 days. Like all my vacations should be 2 days, because by that point I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm done with your historical landmarks here, people.
I'm done with relaxing. I need to get moving.
Yeah.
What kind of conferences do you get the most value out of attending?
Whoever invites me, I don't really care.
So an invite comes in that says, we'd like you to speak at this particular conference,
Right.
and then
Right.
you gauge, and not based on the historical landmarks, you probably gauge it on some other factors.
Well, yeah. Well, then you just go to, the hotel. It's the vacation is the people. It's the getting to meet the people, and it is overwhelming. And I have to take a lot of time. I usually have to take like 2 breaks in the middle of the day just to go back to the hotel room and watch like an old version of Star Trek, the original series, to calm myself down, because I do not like hanging out with people.
Okay.
But I love hanging out with people.
I see. Yeah, it's that the creatives. So many creative people are introverts at heart. They want to be in
Yeah.
front of the keyboard and keyboard, whether it's a typewriter or whether it's a musical keyboard. But there is still some sort of charge that you get for people, but just not for too long, right?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
how do you balance your work days in terms of structuring or scheduling your days? Do you structure your days?
I don't. The structure seems to follow whatever I'm working on. Like last couple of months, my sleep schedule is like get up at 4 a.m., start working, get done by 11 or noon, take a break, take a nap, do some cleanup, go to bed by 8, and redo it. As long as there's something for me to do, I tend to get up really early now. Wasn't always the case. Sometimes I used to work late into the night. But yeah, no, it's changed over the last 10 years. Probably, like major changes, probably every 5 months, I change how I work.
Oh, really? Do you find that invigorating or stimulating, or how does
It,
that happen?
it's just what works for me at that time. It might have to do with the number of hours in a day. It might have to do with how excited about a project that I am. How much work do I have to do? How anxious am I to get started on it versus how anxious am I to kick it down the road a ways and deal with it later? I honestly don't know what it is. I just flow with whatever my body tells me to do. And if my body tells me you need to take a nap at noon, that's what I do.
Hey, that's fun. You got to listen to that body. So I often ask writers questions often, do you listen to music when writing? What kind of music do you listen to? So I'm going to turn that around since you're a musician and say, are there things that you read or shows that you watch that inspire to certain types of music?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the yeah, it's mostly shows and some video games that I watch. I don't actually play them. I just watch other people play them.
Okay.
And it's usually, occasionally, I get inspired by something that's brilliant. Mostly, I get inspired by things that are terrible or lacking in some way.
Oh, is that where you listen to it and you say, oh, I could have done it this way?
Yes, they should have hired me. I could have rocked this, right?
It's funny. There are writers, so many writers I've spoken to over the years that actually say, after finishing reading this book, I was either inspired to want to write a book as good as that, or I thought, wow, I would have done this with it instead.
Yeah.
And that kicked off their career.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to have most of your creative energies filtered by a hatred of what other people did.
Now, you mentioned video games and you mentioned Star Trek, and I want to go back to that. You said you like to watch other people play video games as opposed to playing them yourselves. Are you doing it live? Are you doing it on YouTube videos? How's that happening?
Well, like I will watch YouTube videos or I'll watch some people on Twitch. And sometimes it's the personality playing, and sometimes I just enjoy watching the game because there's some pretty games out there now.
Oh, that's neat. Did you find that inspiring then for some of the work you do?
I'm not well, yeah, one of the problems that I have with like determining what is tax deductible is everything is tax deductible for me. If I go to see a movie, that's research.
Okay.
If I go out to a bar, I'm analyzing the local scene, uh,
Okay.
trying to figure stuff out. You can't, when your job is to create media, and media is everywhere. Everything is your job.
Oh, well, yes, and I had heard you say that everyone has the same job. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh yeah, the everyone has the same job. So my job is to make life easier for other people.
Okay.
My website is designed to be as easy as it can be. My licenses are designed to be as easy as they can be. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to go. It's just make things easier, and you will probably succeed. But that's the job of the cashier at my grocery store. It's her job to make my life easier. It's the job of the Uber driver who picks me up. It is her job to make my life easier. Everyone has the same essential job, no matter what it is,
Which is to make life easier for those
for other
persons based
people.
on the
Yeah,
service or skill that you're bringing to the table.
right. Hopefully,
That's an
yeah,
intriguing way to look at that.
yeah. There's some people out there who are not doing that. Their job is to, try to extract money from people via scams.
Okay.
That is not a good way to live. That is not a good job to have. I hate these people so much.
The only thing they're making it easy for that person to do is to have less money in their bank account or in their
Yes,
pocket.
we must relieve them of the burden that financial responsibility can bring.
Are there particular projects that you are either in the process of working on or that you're looking forward to getting started on in the next little while?
I don't, I mean, I've got, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 quotes out there for various projects. I don't know which ones are going to come back. And there's a couple that I was really excited about, and now I'm less excited. I don't want to go into that, but
Okay, but there's always these things that you're balancing that are coming and you're not sure. Like you
oh,
said, there's 10 different things. You'll see what comes back, make
right.
decisions from there.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
See what I can.
Does that ever um, are there peaks and valleys in terms of that lifestyle? Are there times where there's just way too many projects and you would like to say yes to this many, but you can't handle that many at a time? And then there's other dry periods. How does that work?
There, absolutely, that happens. Luckily, I have a lot of friends who are also composers, and I can go. It's like, all right, this project's good for this person. This project's good for this person. This project's good for this person. I'm going on vacation.
Okay.
you know, and I can offload and hopefully still help the people who came to me with needs get the music that they needed to do their project, even though I don't always have the time to do them. I mean, there was a time where I took everything,
Right.
but now I'm a lot pickier about the projects that I pick up.
Fair enough. When you talk about thinking about a composer colleague and saying this project would be right for them, does that mean that networking amongst composers and musicians is an important aspect of that world?
It's an important aspect of my world, because when I first started doing this, like hardcore, I moved to New York and I ended up living with four other composers, and it was
Whoa.
a magical time because I came from a state with about four composers in it, and now I'm living with them all, and that like just dealing with somebody who has the knowledge that you have and but more ideas, different ideas, better ideas is really important. And yeah, I forget the question, but
It's just the importance of networking with other composers.
I think networking is okay. Uh, Friends, I don't think it's, I don't, networking sounds like something you find in a business book.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yes.
we gotta go into LinkedIn and add all these people. It's like, nah, I like to make friends with people.
So maybe connections is a better good
Yeah,
term. Okay.
connections, right.
All right, fair enough. So are you for social media? What's your stance on social media? Is that more like that sketchy sort of business thing going on, or is it actually about community for you?
I most of my community is done through my website, through Patreon, to a lesser extent on YouTube. Twitter is nice. It's easy. It used to be better back before they let people embed pictures, and now just scrolling pictures.
Yeah.
Um, I have no Facebook presence. I have a friend of mine who's like, you want me to run your Facebook, marketing campaign? And I'm like, I'm not entirely sure that's going to do anything. Because I used to there was like several people had Facebook fan pages,
Right.
and eventually they all reverted to me, and I just let them die. I, I have a really hard time understanding Facebook.
Okay. Now, is there still a MySpace page out there somewhere in the
Yeah,
universe?
MySpace, contact me via ICQ, and uh, friend Stewart.
So I want to close with something a little bit fun. You'd mentioned going back to the hotel room and watching classic episodes of Star Trek. Does this mean that Captain Kirk is the ultimate captain from that universe?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I do not. I don't like Captain Kirk. Picard is clearly a better human being.
Well, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. Next Generation was my introduction to the whole
Yeah.
Star Trek universe.
Is Picard a better captain? They seem to both be effective. I think we just have to look at like how many times have your ships blown up? How
Oh,
many foreign wars have you gotten involved in?
okay. Didn't the ship in the first episode of the Next Generation, didn't it get destroyed in the very first one?
And like there's got to be a count, I'm
Yeah.
sure, of Enterprise explosions.
Okay. Yeah. There's
Or
a count of how many zombies Rick has killed on The Walking Dead, so there's got to be
yes.
somewhere out there. Any advice for those who are looking at that? They love music, they love musicians, that they're looking at. How can I be a composer? How can I get involved? What would be the best advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that a lot, and I'm confused by it
Okay.
because, like, if I want to become a painter, I'm just gonna start painting.
Okay.
And I will be terrible as. By the way, I am a terrible painter, but I really enjoy it. But then you learn, and then you learn, and if you keep doing it, then eventually, well, now you're that painter guy. So, yeah, just stop thinking. Stop thinking about making stuff and just start doing stuff. Because the number of questions that you will have and the knowledge that you'll get by doing something is way better than even attending like a 50-hour seminar on this is how to compose.
That's
Do
see.
it and do it wrong, like a lot.
I think that's fantastic advice for creative people, is just getting in there and doing it.
Yeah.
Now, for the listeners, where
Oh, don't hang on. One more thing.
what's
Don't
that?
start too big. I've
Okay.
run across people who are like, "Yeah, I need to write this. I need to write this four-movement symphony." I'm like, "All right. Well, have you written any 30-second ditties?" No, no, no. I can't be bothered with that. I got to write this masterpiece. I'm like, "Nope, nope, nope." Bigger pieces are made out of smaller pieces. They don't exist by themselves. Get good at the smaller pieces, and eventually they'll start, you know, getting bigger and more cohesive.
Okay, that's it. Kind of runs parallel to writing advice, where I'm going to write an epic 10-book series. But have you
Yeah.
ever written even a story before? No, no, no. But I can do this.
Right. And does it happen, by the way? Do people actually like kick off like it's like I've never really written before, but here's my novel.
Yeah. Or I've never read a book before, but I'm going to write. I'm going to write one. Yeah, that
Yeah.
happens. Not always very successful for some
Okay.
strange reason. So,
probably the same thing, right? When they're doing
Yeah.
when they're composing the four acts. Where can people find you or find out more about you and check out some of your music?
My website's #1 for finding all the stuff I do, incompetech.com. You can get all the stuff there. Patreon, people get it early. But honestly, just Google for graph paper. You will find me.
Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for the call.
Given the current unreliability of my voice, I won't be offering much in the post-interview reflection, but I do want to call out 2 important things that Kevin shares. The first is his advice for creators that's similar to the advice we heard last episode, in episode 10, from Gene Leggett of One More Story Games. And it's the importance of starting small, of actually working at your craft, at practicing, at getting better, at just doing it. Interesting that Kevin's take as a musician is so similar to Gene's in terms of story. The second thing is a much bigger topic, and it's how free can work effectively in the right ways to allow greater discoverability of your work, which can lead to sales, to income, to opportunity that might not have previously existed. I always have free content available to aid in readers discovering my work. Now, Kevin is a great example of a musician who provides tons of work for free, making it easier for artists like me to find suitable musical pieces for use in podcasts and videos. And even though the conversion from free to pay is tiny, it's a model that has worked remarkably well for him. When I worked at Kobo, we did repeated studies of how the importance of that first free book in a series could play in readers discovering new writers and starting to read and buy a new series. And it was always something that turned out to work to the benefit of the person offering their free work. It was actually a good customer acquisition tool at Kobo as well. The end result was always an increase in sales. But that's enough talking from me. As I mentioned in the opening, I'll be sharing the musical bits from my old podcast, Prelude to a Scream here, with a piece of music from Kevin MacLeod called Noir Mild Tension, which I absolutely adore. So here's the very opening of episode 18 of Prelude to a Scream, where I introduce my story, Spirits. You'll also hear the closing as well.
People who haven't died can still leave their spirit in a place, and they spend the rest of their lives searching for something because they have this empty feeling. They don't know what it is, though. They don't realize that their spirit is still waiting for them at the place where they left it. Silent screams bounce around my head like an impending storm, brewing into a force that will escape in a wild dance of chaos and be lost forever if I don't stop to write them down. Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Prelude to a Scream, podcast fiction by Mark Leslie. I'm your host, Mark Leslie, and this time around we have something very special. We have a story called Spirits, which has never been published before. It's the first time I'm doing this on the podcast. Spirits. You've been listening to Prelude to a Scream, podcast fiction by Mark Leslie. This podcast has been released under a Creative Commons 2.0 non-commercial, no derivatives license, which basically means feel free to copy it as many times as you want and give it to as many thousands of people you can. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Isn't that music just awfully amazing and creepy? I still love it, and I love the music that Kevin MacLeod puts out. Thanks so much for listening to episode 11 of Stark Reflections. I almost said Prelude to a Scream, but thanks for listening to Stark Reflections. And if you listened to a little bit of Prelude to a Scream, well, thanks for listening to that too. If you like the show, please share it with a friend or leave a review. We'll catch you again next week in episode 12.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.